He pushed me so hard I fell to the ground in my red dress. Everyone laughed as champagne spilled all over me. My ex-boyfriend stood over me, humiliating me in front of hundreds of people. Then his girlfriend poured wine on my head. I was crying, broken, destroyed. Until my phone rang, and everything changed forever. This story will shock you to your core. Watch till the very end because the revenge is absolutely explosive. Subscribe right now and turn on notifications because you don't want to miss what happens next. My name is Gabriella, and 2 years ago, I married a man named Andrew in a simple courthouse ceremony. No big wedding, no fancy reception, just the two of us and a judge. My family thought I was crazy. My mother cried for weeks, saying I'd ruined my life. You see, before Andrew, I was dating Brandon, a successful investment banker who drove a BMW and wore expensive suits. Everyone loved Brandon. He was charming, confident, and always made sure people knew how much money he had. But Brandon was also cruel. He controlled everything I did, criticized my appearance constantly, and made me feel small. When I finally found the courage to leave him, I felt free for the first time in years. That's when I met Andrew at a coffee shop. He was kind, gentle, and actually listened when I spoke. He drove an ordinary car, wore simple clothes, and told me he was a business consultant who traveled a lot for work. We fell in love quickly, and 6 months later, we got married. Andrew was always traveling. Singapore 1 week, London the next, sometimes Tokyo. He'd be gone for days, sometimes weeks, but he'd call me every single night. We lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment, and I worked as a 3rd-grade teacher at a local elementary school. Money was sometimes tight, and I'd dip into my savings to cover bills when Andrew was away. But I didn't care. He treated me like I mattered, like my thoughts and feelings were important. That was worth more than any amount of money. My mother never let me forget her disappointment. Every family dinner, every phone call, she'd sigh and say things like, "You could have had such a different life, Gabriella. Brandon was going places. What does Andrew even do?" My cousin Sophie was even worse. She stayed friends with Brandon after our breakup and constantly sent me pictures of him at fancy restaurants and exotic vacations with his new girlfriend. It hurt, but I tried to ignore it. Then, 3 weeks before Christmas, a fancy cream-colored envelope arrived at my apartment by courier. Inside was an embossed invitation to a reunion Christmas gala at the Hotel Riverside Grand, one of the most luxurious hotels in the city. My old college group was organizing it. I hadn't spoken to most of these people in years, but my friend Jessica called me that same evening. "Gabriella, you got the invitation, right? You absolutely have to come. Everyone will be there." Her voice sounded strange, overly enthusiastic in a way that made me uncomfortable. Something felt off about the whole thing, but I convinced myself I was being paranoid. Maybe it would be nice to reconnect with old friends. Maybe I was being too suspicious. I called Andrew, who was in Singapore at the time. "There's this Christmas party," I told him. "My old college friends, I'm thinking about going." He was quiet for a moment, then said, "You should go, Gabriella. Enjoy yourself. Have fun. You deserve a night out." His voice was warm and encouraging. Like always, I bought a simple red dress from a department store, spending money I'd been saving for new classroom supplies. It wasn't designer, but it was pretty, and I felt good in it. The night of the party, I walked into the Hotel Riverside Grand and immediately felt like I'd made a terrible mistake. The lobby was breathtaking, all marble floors and crystal chandeliers. Everyone was dressed like they'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. The women wore designer gowns and diamonds that caught the light with every movement. The men were in expensive tuxedos, holding glasses of champagne that probably cost more than my monthly rent. I smoothed down my red dress, suddenly very aware of how simple it looked. Jessica spotted me from across the lobby and walked over, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Gabriella, you made it!" She air-kissed both my cheeks, then looked me up and down. "That's a cute dress. Very vintage." The way she said it made my stomach drop. This wasn't a friendly reunion. I could feel it in the air, see it in the way people glanced at me and whispered to each other. I followed Jessica into the grand ballroom. And that's when I saw him. Brandon. He stood near the bar, surrounded by people like he was holding court. He wore a perfectly tailored tuxedo, a Rolex gleaming on his wrist. Next to him was Christine, his new fiancée, a tall, stunning woman who looked like she belonged on a magazine cover. The moment Brandon's eyes met mine, his face lit up with something that made my blood run cold. Not happiness, not surprise, satisfaction like a predator spotting prey. "Well, well, well," he said loudly, cutting through the conversations around him. "Look who actually showed up, everyone. My ex-girlfriend is here." He said it like an announcement, and suddenly all eyes were on me. I wanted to disappear, to run out of that ballroom and never look back, but my feet wouldn't move. Brandon walked toward me with that confident swagger I used to find attractive. Now it just made me sick. "Gabriella," he said, his voice dripping with fake warmth. "It's been so long. Come here. Let me introduce you to everyone." He grabbed my arm, not gently, and pulled me to the center of the room. "Everyone, this is Gabriella. We dated for 3 years. Tell them, Gabriella, what does your husband do?" My throat felt tight. He's in business. He's a consultant." My voice came out weak, barely audible. Brandon laughed, and it echoed through the ballroom. "A consultant, that's what they call unemployed these days, isn't it?" People started laughing. Not everyone, but enough. Enough to make my face burn with shame. Christine stepped forward, looking me up and down with obvious disdain. "That dress," she said, tilting her head. "Is it vintage? It looks like something from 3 seasons ago." More laughter. I tried to speak, to defend myself, but the words wouldn't come. I just stood there, frozen, as they picked me apart, piece by piece. Then it got worse. So much worse. My cousin Sophie appeared from the crowd, and for a brief, stupid moment, I thought she was coming to help me, but the look on her face told me everything I needed to know. "Gabriella," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "we tried to warn you, didn't we? The whole family tried to tell you that leaving Brandon was a mistake." She turned to the crowd like she was performing, "Her mother calls me crying, you know, says she doesn't know what happened to her daughter. Gabriella had everything with Brandon, and she threw it away for a man who's never even around. He's always traveling, always gone. Probably cheating on her." The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. My own cousin, my own blood, was sharing my family's private pain to entertain these people. Brandon raised his champagne glass. "A toast," he announced, "to old times and bad decisions." He shoved the glass into my hand, and as I took it, he stepped forward and bumped into me hard. It wasn't an accident. I saw it in his eyes, felt the intentional force behind it. My heel caught on my dress, and I fell backward, completely losing my balance. I hit the ground hard, my red dress tearing slightly at the hem. Champagne spilled everywhere, soaking into the fabric, splashing across the polished marble floor. For a moment, the entire ballroom went silent. Then the laughter started. Not just a few people, but waves of it, rolling through the crowd like a cruel tide. Brandon stood over me, looking down with mock concern. "Oops, still clumsy, I see. Some things never change." I tried to get up, my hands shaking, my eyes burning with tears I refused to let fall. That's when Christine stepped forward, holding a glass of red wine. She looked down at me with a smile that was pure malice. "You look thirsty, darling," she said sweetly. Then she poured the entire glass on my head. The wine was cold and shocking, running down my face, through my hair, staining my dress a deep crimson. I couldn't hold back the tears anymore. They mixed with the wine, and my mascara started running, and I could hear people taking pictures with their phones. Christine was filming me. "This is definitely going on social media," she laughed. Brandon leaned down, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "This is what happens when you think you're too good for me, Gabriella. You chose poverty over me. You chose a ghost who's never around over someone who could have given you everything. How does it feel now? How does it feel to be nothing?" I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. Nobody helped me. Not one person in that entire ballroom moved to offer me a hand or a napkin or even a kind word. They just watched, some laughing, some looking uncomfortable, but doing nothing. Even the hotel staff looked away, embarrassed but unwilling to intervene. Brandon stepped back and tapped his champagne glass with a knife. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention." The room quieted down. "I want to tell you all about Gabriella. We dated for 3 years, and she was convinced she was special, convinced she deserved better than me, than this." He gestured around the luxurious ballroom. "Now look at her, married to a man who's never around, a man who's probably cheating on her while she plays teacher for pennies. Gabriella, you could have had this life. You could have had everything. Instead, you chose whatever it is you have now." He paused, putting on an expression of fake sympathy that made me want to scream. "It's honestly just sad. You were always making bad decisions, but this is your worst one yet." The crowd murmured in agreement. Some people were nodding. My cousin Sophie had tears in her eyes, but they weren't for me. They were tears of pity, like she was watching something pathetic. I was still on the ground, wine-soaked and broken. When my phone started ringing in my purse, I ignored it. I couldn't deal with anything else. But it rang again, and again. Brandon's eyes lit up with fresh cruelty. He reached down and snatched my purse, digging through it until he found my phone. "Let's see who's calling. Probably bill collectors." He looked at the screen, and I saw his expression change for just a second. Something flickered across his face. Confusion, maybe. Or was it fear? "It says Andrew, my husband, with a little heart emoji," Brandon announced mockingly. "How sweet. Let's say hello." He answered the call and put it on speakerphone, holding it up high so everyone could hear. "Hello," Brandon said in a cheerful, mocking voice. "This is your wife's ex-boyfriend." There was a pause. Then a man's voice came through, calm and cold in a way that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "Put my wife on the phone. Now." It was Andrew, but he sounded different. There was an edge to his voice I'd never heard before, something hard and unyielding. Brandon laughed. "She's a bit wet right now. We had a little accident with some wine. Your wife is quite the entertainment tonight." He was playing to the crowd, and they were eating it up, laughing and encouraging him. "Where are you?" Andrew asked. His voice was quieter now, more controlled, and somehow that made it more frightening. "Hotel Riverside Grand," Brandon announced proudly. "Your wife is the star of our Christmas party. You should come down. We'd love to meet the mysterious husband." There was a long silence on the other end, so long that Brandon started to look uncomfortable. Then Andrew spoke again, just 2 words, but they sent a chill through the room. "Don't move." The line went dead. Brandon stared at the phone for a moment, then laughed it off, but I could see something in his eyes now. Uncertainty. He tossed my phone back into my purse and helped himself to another glass of champagne, but his hand was shaking slightly. Christine noticed it too. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Nothing," Brandon said quickly. "Just some nobody trying to sound tough." But something had shifted. I stood up slowly, wine dripping from my hair, my dress ruined, my dignity in tatters. I walked to the bathroom to try to clean myself up, and as I passed through the crowd, I heard someone whisper, "This is getting interesting." In the bathroom, I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked destroyed. Wine stained my hair and dress. My makeup was ruined. My eyes were red from crying. I should have left right then. I should have called a cab and gone home. But something kept me there. Maybe it was Andrew's voice on the phone, that cold certainty in his tone. Maybe it was the part of me that refused to let Brandon win. I don't know. I cleaned myself up as best I could and walked back out to the ballroom. 15 minutes had passed since the phone call. The party had resumed, people were drinking and laughing, and Brandon was back to being the center of attention. Then everything changed. The hotel lobby outside the ballroom suddenly erupted with activity. I could hear it through the doors, voices shouting orders, the sound of rapid footsteps. People in the ballroom started noticing, turning to look toward the entrance. Through the ballroom's glass doors, I could see hotel security rushing around, and the hotel's general manager, a distinguished man in a perfect suit, practically running through the lobby. 3 black SUVs pulled up outside the hotel's main entrance, the kind of vehicles that scream money and power. The ballroom went quiet, everyone watching, wondering what was happening. Then the doors opened, and Andrew walked in. But this wasn't the Andrew I knew. This man wore a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than my car, perfectly tailored to his frame. He moved with absolute confidence, with authority that made everyone in the room instinctively step back. 4 assistants followed him, one speaking urgently into a phone. The hotel manager was practically bowing as he walked alongside Andrew, saying something I couldn't hear. Andrew's eyes scanned the ballroom and found me immediately. His face was calm, but I could see the fury burning underneath. He walked straight to me, ignoring every other person in that room, and gently touched my stained dress, then my face. His jaw clenched. "Who did this to you?" he asked quietly. Before I could answer, Brandon stepped forward with that same cocky confidence. "Oh, the mysterious husband finally shows up. Welcome to the party, buddy." He was smiling, but I could see the nervousness in his eyes now. Andrew turned to look at him, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. "You pushed my wife?" Andrew asked. His voice was soft, controlled, deadly. Brandon laughed, but it sounded forced. "It was an accident, man. Maybe buy her better shoes next time, or a better dress." He looked around for support, but the crowd had gone silent. The hotel manager had gone pale, his eyes wide with what looked like horror. Jessica, my old friend who had invited me to this nightmare, suddenly gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth and she stared at Andrew like she'd seen a ghost. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Brandon, that's Andrew Westbrook." Brandon looked confused. "So, should I be impressed?" He was still trying to maintain his bravado, but it was cracking. The hotel manager stepped forward, his voice shaking. "Sir, Mr. Westbrook owns this hotel." Brandon laughed again, but it was hollow now. "He's the manager? That's cute." The manager shook his head slowly. "No, sir. He owns this hotel and the other 47 properties in the Westbrook International chain." The silence that followed was deafening. Someone in the crowd pulled out their phone and started frantically typing. "Oh my God," a woman's voice said. "He's worth $3.2 billion. Andrew Westbrook, CEO of Westbrook International. It's all here." She held up her phone, showing a Forbes article with Andrew's picture. I watched as the realization hit Brandon's face. The color drained from his cheeks, his confident smile disappeared, replaced by pure shock. Christine, his fiancée, stepped away from him like he was suddenly toxic. "Brandon," she hissed, "you said she married a loser. You said she made a terrible mistake." Christine's eyes went wide, and she started moving toward Andrew, her hands out in a pleading gesture. "Mr. Westbrook, I'm so sorry. I had no idea who you were. If I had known—" Andrew held up one hand, and she stopped mid-sentence. "Don't," he said simply. That's when Christine did something I'll never forget. She looked at Brandon with pure disgust, pulled the engagement ring off her finger, and threw it at him. It bounced off his chest and clattered to the floor. "We're done," she said coldly. Then she turned and walked out of the ballroom, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Brandon was left standing there, alone, his face a mask of disbelief and growing panic. Andrew turned back to the hotel manager. "Did you see what happened here tonight?" The manager nodded quickly. "Yes, sir, everything. The security cameras captured it all." Andrew nodded. "Send the footage to my lawyers, all of it." Then he looked at Brandon, and I'd never seen my husband look at anyone with such cold contempt. "You assaulted my wife. You humiliated her publicly. You filmed it and threatened to put it on social media." Brandon was shaking now, his earlier confidence completely gone. "It was just a joke. She fell. I didn't mean—" Andrew cut him off. "You didn't mean what? To push her? To pour wine on her head? To mock her in front of hundreds of people?" He pulled out his phone and made a call right there, in front of everyone. "Robert, it's Andrew. That Thompson Tech contract we were about to finalize? Cancel it, immediately." Brandon's eyes went impossibly wide. "Wait, that's my company. That's my contract." Andrew looked at him with no emotion at all. "Not anymore. I own 60% of your investors. By Monday morning, you'll have nothing. Brandon actually fell to his knees. Please, please, I'm sorry. I didn't know who you were. I'll apologize. I'll do anything. Andrew's expression didn't change. You shouldn't need to know who someone's husband is to treat them with basic respect and human decency. You're not sorry you did it. You're sorry about the consequences. He turned to the security guards who had appeared at the doorway. Escort this man out. He's banned from all Westbrook properties worldwide. That's when my cousin Sophie pushed through the crowd, tears streaming down her face. Gabriella, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. We're family. I looked at her, at this woman who had betrayed me just an hour ago, and I felt nothing but cold disappointment. You shared my family's private struggles to entertain these people, Sophie. You betrayed me because you thought I'd married someone beneath me. You chose your side. Andrew put his arm around me protectively. She won't be attending any more family events. Neither will I. You're no longer welcome in our lives. Sophie's face crumpled. She'd just realized that she'd lost access to a billionaire family member, someone who could have changed her life. But more than that, she'd lost family. She'd lost me. The other party guests who had laughed at my humiliation were now scrambling to apologize. Jessica grabbed my arm. Gabriella, please, I'm so sorry. We were just having fun. I didn't know it would go this far. Andrew pulled me gently away from her. Fun? You call what you did to my wife fun? He looked at the crowd of people, all of them suddenly very interested in their shoes. Every single one of you watched her fall, watched someone pour wine on her head, watched her cry, and you laughed. He pulled out his phone again. Gabriella, what's your mother's number? I gave it to him, confused. He dialed it, and when my mother answered, he put it on speaker. Mrs. Torres, this is Andrew, Gabriella's husband. I'm calling because I think you should know what happened tonight. He proceeded to tell her everything, every detail. My mother's voice came through the phone, horrified and crying. Oh my God, Gabriella, I'm so sorry. I was so wrong about him. I was so wrong about everything. Brandon was being escorted out by security now, and the photographers who had been taking pictures of my humiliation were now snapping photos of him being removed from the party. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Andrew wrapped his suit jacket around my shoulders. We're leaving, he said simply. We walked through the ballroom, through the crowd that parted for us like the Red Sea Hotel staff bowed as we passed. Someone tried to take a picture, but one of Andrew's security team stepped in front of the camera. We got into the center SUV, and as soon as the door closed, I felt like I could breathe again. The vehicle pulled away from the hotel, and I looked at Andrew, really looked at him, and saw both the man I married and someone I didn't fully know. Why didn't you tell me? I asked quietly. About the money. About who you really are. Andrew took my hand gently. I was married once before, Gabriella, years ago, before I built the company. She loved my money, not me. When things got difficult, when I was working 18-hour days to build something, she left. She said I was boring, that I cared more about business than her. He paused, looking out the window. When I met you, you didn't care that I drove an old car. You didn't care that we lived in a modest apartment. You loved me when you thought I was just a consultant making an average income. That's how I knew you were real. That's how I knew your love was real. Tears were running down my face again, but they were different tears now. I would have married you if you had nothing, Andrew. I married you because you made me feel valued, because you treated me like I mattered. He smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. I know that's exactly why I married you. Then he told me something that made my heart stop. I knew about the party, Gabriella. A friend of mine who works in hotel management heard about it and thought something seemed off about how it was organized. He called me in Singapore 3 hours ago. I got on the first plane back. He came back for me. He dropped everything and flew halfway around the world because he sensed I might need him. What happens now? I asked. Andrew squeezed my hand. Now we go home. We order takeout, we watch a movie, and we forget this ever happened. Brandon will face the consequences of his actions, both legally and professionally. Your cousin made her choice, and those people at that party, they don't matter. They never did." And he was right. Within a week, I heard through mutual friends that Brandon's business had completely collapsed. His investors pulled out, his contracts were canceled, and he was facing multiple lawsuits Christine had left him, and he'd become a cautionary tale in social circles. My cousin Sophie tried calling me dozens of times, but I never answered. My mother came to visit, apologizing profusely, and slowly we started rebuilding our relationship. She finally understood that money doesn't define a good husband, character does. As for me and Andrew, nothing really changed. We still lived in our modest apartment because we liked it. We still ordered pizza on Friday nights and watched old movies. The only difference was that I finally understood the full picture of the man I'd married. Not just a billionaire, but a man who valued privacy, humility, and genuine connection over flash and status. A man who would drop everything and fly across the world to protect his wife. That night at the Christmas party changed everything, but not in the way Brandon intended. He thought he was exposing my failure. Instead, he revealed his own cruelty and lost everything I learned, that I'd chosen the right person, that my instincts were correct, and that real love doesn't need to announce itself to be powerful. So that's my story. Sometimes karma doesn't just knock on the door. Sometimes it walks in wearing a perfectly tailored suit and changes everything in an instant. Brandon lost his business, his fiancée, and his reputation. But I gained something more valuable than revenge. I gained the absolute certainty that I married a good man, not because he's wealthy, but because when I was at my lowest point, he dropped everything to stand beside me. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button right now, subscribe, and hit the bell icon because I share real-life drama and karma stories every single week. Comment below and tell me, have you ever been underestimated and then proved everyone wrong? I want to hear your story. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message today. Remember, your worth is never defined by other people's opinions. Stay strong, stay humble, and trust that karma will always handle the rest. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.